All right, diving in. You guys sent us some seriously deep stuff this time around. Really makes you think, it's all about life, with and without the whole God thing.
Yeah, pretty heavy topics.
I mean, these sources are getting at the big questions, right? What are we here for? What's the point of it all? And what happens, after all this is over?
Yeah, after we check out the big mystery.
Exactly. So we're going to unpack all that in this deep dive, see what insights we can pull out, maybe even some aha moments for everyone listening, and no matter where you stand on things personally.
Gotta love those aha moments.
We're going to look at what drives people towards belief, what leads others away from it, how these different perspectives shape our everyday lives, and the different ways people find meaning and purpose.
And of course, we can't forget the whole afterlife question. Different beliefs, different views on what happens after we die.
That's right. So much to cover.
Yeah, a lot of ground to cover.
So let's start with why people believe in God.
Okay, good place to start.
Your sources highlight a few key motivations here. The first one that really jumped out at me, especially in that article on existentialism you sent, is this deep-seated need for a sense of purpose.
Right, that need to feel like our lives actually mean something. That we're not just random specks in a vast, meaningless universe.
Exactly, like what's it all for, right?
Yeah.
And belief in God often provides that framework, that sense that we're part of something bigger.
It's a big draw for many people, having that grand narrative, that cosmic story where our lives fit into a larger design. Your sources mention how this can be really powerful, especially in combating feelings of alienation or meaninglessness.
Makes you feel less alone in the world.
Yeah, definitely.
And building on that whole purpose thing, another big theme was hope and strength. Especially in the personal stories you share, people talked about how their faith gave them comfort, courage, resilience, especially when facing tough times.
That's like having that anchor in the middle of a storm.
Absolutely. And there's actually a psychological mechanism at play there. Belief can help people reframe adversity.
Oh, totally. Like even suffering can have a purpose within a larger plan. And having that belief that there's a source of strength beyond yourself, well, that can be incredibly powerful.
Like you're not alone in your struggles.
Exactly. Some of your sources even mention studies showing that connection between faith and better coping skills.
Makes sense. Another important element that came up a lot in your readings was the idea of moral guidance. For a lot of people, religion provides that framework for knowing right from wrong.
Yeah, a clear set of principles to live by. It's like a moral compass for navigating those tricky ethical situations that life throws at us.
And it's not just about personal conduct, right? It often influences community ethics and even legal systems.
Totally. If you look back through history, you see how religious beliefs have shaped societal norms and laws across so many cultures.
And that shared understanding of values, that's often a foundation for social cohesion, right? People coming together with a common ground.
It's the glue that holds things together in a lot of ways.
And speaking of coming together, we can't forget about community and belonging. You said a bunch of stuff about the strong social bonds and support networks that people find in religious groups.
Yeah, whether it's churches, mosques, temples, whatever form it takes, these communities offer a powerful sense of shared identity. It's not just about beliefs, it's about shared rituals, traditions, helping each other out in times of need.
Like a safety net.
Absolutely. Those sociological readings you sent really highlighted how crucial those groups can be for people's emotional well-being. It's human nature to crave connection.
Totally. And finally, those personal stories you included really showed the power of those personal experiences in strengthening faith.
Right. Those moments people interpret as a direct connection with God. Answer to prayers, feelings of divine presence, or even what they perceive as miracles.
It's super personal, often transformative. Like it goes beyond just intellectually accepting religious doctrine. It becomes about something you've felt and experienced.
Those accounts are so compelling, even if they're not empirically verifiable, They hold immense personal significance for the people who experience them. They shape their worldview.
Okay, so we've got a good grasp on why people believe. But let's switch gears. Why do some people choose a life without God?
Good question.
Well, one of the biggest reasons your sources pointed to was the emphasis on science and logic. The idea that scientific explanations make the concept of a higher power unnecessary.
Right. It's about prioritizing empirical evidence,
Yeah.
Testability, rational inquiry. Those are the most reliable ways of understanding the universe, according to this perspective.
So as science progresses, We have less and less need for divine intervention to explain the world around us.
Exactly. One of the articles you sent, I think it was from a scientific journal, laid out this argument really clearly.
Another important theme was the value placed on personal freedom.
Self-determination, making your own choices without religious constraints. It's about owning your values, living authentically without any dogma dictating your life.
And that often ties into the perception that some religious doctrines can be restrictive.
Absolutely. It can feel like an external authority imposing itself on your personal decisions, your lifestyle. You had some philosophy sources that explored that tension between individual liberty and those external moral frameworks.
Really interesting stuff. Your readings also highlighted the role of doubt and unanswered questions as a pathway to non-belief.
It's a very valid point. For some, the lack of what they see as compelling evidence for God's existence, coupled with those big, unanswered questions about suffering, the nature of existence, it leads them to skepticism or atheism.
Makes sense. It's a critical, evidence-based approach to belief.
Definitely. The absence of proof, combined with maybe some logical inconsistencies in religious doctrines, it can lead people to conclude that belief just isn't warranted.
You also included some pretty powerful accounts of how negative religious experiences pushed people away from faith.
Yeah, those are really impactful. It's important to acknowledge that human element within organized religion. Sometimes people have negative encounters, whether it's hypocrisy, abuse of power, judgmental attitudes.
It's bound to happen in any large institution.
Right, and it's understandable why that would lead someone to distance themselves from religion, and in some cases, to question the underlying beliefs altogether.
And then there's the idea of self-sufficiency.
The belief that you can be moral and ethical and have a fulfilling life without religious faith.
It's about finding meaning and purpose through secular pursuits and human connection. Relationships, work, hobbies.
It all boils down to recognizing that inherent human capacity for empathy, ethical reasoning, the pursuit of well-being, regardless of your religious beliefs. Like, morality and meaning can be grounded in humanism or ethical philosophy, or even personal values that you've developed through experience.
So we've explored those diverse motivations behind belief and non-belief. Now let's look at how those play out in everyday life.
All right, let's get practical.
Starting with those who do believe in God, your sources really emphasize practices like prayer and worship.
Right, and not just as a way to ask God for things, but also to cultivate inner peace, express gratitude, reflect on things.
Yeah, some of your readings, especially that study on mindfulness, even compared meditative prayer to secular mindfulness practices, like in terms of reducing stress.
Interesting connection. But it makes sense, right? Prayer, no matter what form it takes, can serve a lot of functions. Spiritual connection, emotional outlet, contemplation.
Right. It can provide structure, comfort, a feeling of being connected to something bigger than yourself.
It can contribute to a greater sense of well-being, definitely. And your sources also showed how faith can be a source of strength when people face tough times.
Absolutely. When you believe in a divine plan or a benevolent higher power, it can give you solace in the face of loss, sickness, any kind of hardship.
It helps people find meaning and hope, even in the darkest moments. Some of those personal testimonies you shared were so powerful in showing that.
Yeah, really moving stuff. And what's important here is the framework that faith provides for understanding suffering. It's not just blind acceptance. It's this belief that there's a larger purpose, that you're supported by a divine presence.
It allows you to navigate uncertainty with a greater sense of peace because you feel like you're not alone in your struggles.
And then there's the impact of religious values on daily interactions.
Yeah.
A lot of believers strive to live by principles like love, kindness, honesty, forgiveness.
Yeah, they try to align their lives with their faith. It's the practical application of those belief systems.
Right, it's about more than just words. And those values are often reinforced through teachings and community norms, right?
Definitely. They can create a sense of moral responsibility and guide how people treat each other. It contributes to the fabric of society as a whole.
Now, for those who don't believe in God, their approach to daily life can look quite different, according to your sources.
Different tools for different folks.
Instead of turning to prayer in challenging situations, they might rely on other coping mechanisms.
Like logic, therapy, friends and family, self-reflection.
It's about relying on those secular frameworks, emphasizing reason, human connection, evidence-based approaches.
You had some great examples of these alternative strategies in those psychology sources you sent. And when it comes to dealing with hardship, instead of seeking comfort in a divine plan, many non-believers find it in other ways.
Like finding strength within themselves, in human resilience, or just accepting that uncertainty is part of life.
Right. It's about embracing the unknown and finding ways to cope without resorting to supernatural explanations.
In the absence of religious rules, morality tends to be more self-defined, right?
Yeah, it's grounded in personal ethics, empathy, reason, a sense of social responsibility.
It's about consciously constructing your own ethical framework.
Absolutely. And, as those philosophy readings highlighted, strong moral compasses aren't exclusive to religion. People can develop those based on secular principles, humanistic values, a commitment to fairness and justice.
So another big question we tackled was finding purpose.
A big one, for sure.
Your reading showed that for believers, purpose is often tied to serving God and others within their religious community.
It's about fulfilling a divine will, contributing to a cosmic plan. Those theological texts you sent really dug into that idea of a divinely ordained purpose.
It gives a really clear, often deeply meaningful answer to the question of why we're here. But for non-believers, the focus shifts to self-created meaning.
Right. Purpose isn't preordained. It's something you define and pursue on your own terms.
It might be through relationships, work, creativity, even just enjoying life's simple pleasures.
And given the idea that life is finite, each moment becomes even more precious. It's about making the most of your time here. And that brings us to the whole question of life after death.
Yeah, the big unknown.
The ultimate mystery.
Your religious texts were pretty clear on that one. Death is a transition to another state of being.
Heaven, reincarnation, spiritual awakening. It offers comfort, alleviates the fear of death, because there's the promise of something beyond this life, maybe even reuniting with loved ones.
But non-religious sources tend to see death as the end of individual existence, the cessation of consciousness.
And that often leads to a greater focus on living fully in the present, making a positive impact while you can.
Because this is it, you got to make it count.
Exactly. But even without belief in God, your sources touched on this idea of spirituality.
Oh yeah, that's interesting. How did they define that?
More broadly, I'd say. It's about those experiences of awe and wonder, a sense of connection to something larger than yourself. You can find it in nature, meditation, music, art, philosophy even.
So it's not about religion. It's about seeking those transcendent moments, regardless of your beliefs.
Exactly, like standing in awe of the vastness of the universe, experiencing the beauty of nature, connecting with something deeply moving in music or art. Those can be deeply spiritual experiences for anyone.
So after this deep dive into your sources, it seems like a key takeaway is that whether you believe in God or not, a meaningful life often comes down to how you live, how you treat others, and what you do with your time.
Yeah, both perspectives offer frameworks for navigating those big questions, even if they're different frameworks. And it's really illuminating to see how much common ground there is between them.
Right. That emphasis on compassion, being a good person, seeking meaning, it seems like that's a universal human thing. So for everyone listening, take a moment to reflect on everything we've talked about today, all the insights from your own sources. What resonates with you the most? How do you understand purpose and meaning? And how do different beliefs or lack thereof shape your life and your view of the world?
It's a great time for some personal reflection. Thinking about these different viewpoints can really deepen our understanding of ourselves and how we try to make sense of existence.
And to leave you with a final thought, consider this. Could it be that the search for meaning and purpose is just wired into us as humans? Like it's a core drive that expresses itself in all these different ways through beliefs, philosophies, individual journeys. What are those fundamental needs that both religious and non-religious perspectives are trying to address, each in their own unique way?
Now, that is a question worth pondering. It really gets at the heart of the human experience, our shared quest to figure out our place in the universe and find something that makes our lives feel truly significant.
Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.
It's been a pleasure, as always.